Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We're back. It's Caleb, Thomas, and I tonight. We're just going to have a little chit chat and take it easy for the show tonight. We have a few topics we want to discuss, but nothing too serious. Tonight is the 10th anniversary show. If you can
Woo!
if you can believe that, starting with the Gnostic Media podcast 10 years ago tonight, and the first interview was Carl Ruck, who ended up being CIA, that I didn't even know about that at the time. But things happen. We've learned and grown over the years, and why isn't it showing as live yet on the screen here? I'm not sure what's going on. Let's see here. Are we live yet? Is it showing? Yep, it's showing now. I've got it's playing a commercial now. Woo, great. All right, I just had to refresh the screen. There it goes. All right, so a few topics to discuss, but just wanted to kind of have an easy, relaxing conversation. Some of the things I wanted to discuss tonight are like veganism, government by consensus. Fiona Barnett keeps coming up. I probably should talk about her for a minute, and a little project I've been working on this on the side with for a while. I need to get that done soon, but I'm going to show you all a little preview of that tonight, so that should be fun. And might discuss a little bit on the left-right paradigm. What's going on, Caleb?
Not much, yeah. And congratulations on the 10th year anniversary. You're officially an OG now, right?
Oh, is that what it is? OG? Oh, goodness. So,
It's
yeah.
been a long road, hasn't it? I mean, I remember I've been watching now. I don't think saw you with your first couple shows, but I found you pretty quick. And it's just it's been a really cool journey watching you, learn. And I was learning all similar topics as you were. We were into similar stuff for the last 10 years, and it's just been a really cool road watching you grow and come to where you're at now. It's cool.
Yeah, well, let's see. When I started the show, I was a very ignorant leftist and believed all of the stuff. I thought it was legit, I didn't dig
Mm-hmm.
deep enough and look deep enough. Let's see, what was it? 10 years ago tomorrow, or no, 9 years ago tomorrow, Gino Denning and I did our first show on the Trivium method, and that was a total game changer. That's really
Mm-hmm.
what changed everything. And quickly from the year after that was when I started questioning all the psychedelic stuff, and Gene said I would.
Mm-hmm.
But so then I started looking at everybody I was working with, and sure enough, boy, that opened a can of worms. That was MK Ultra, and just kind of went from there into all of this. I mean, I had no idea that the Trivium would reveal so much that it has. And for those of you who still haven't, done the full study of that, you really should. I'm going to pull it up here on the screen here because like up here, if you people in the audience, most people just go down here on the front page and they'll study the shows just straight down the front, and that's pretty much it. There's actually a lot more to study. If you go up here to study materials, there's books and everything listed on this page if it loads. Come on, study materials. And so we've got all these downloads here. There's supposed to be books showing right there, and for some reason they're not. I thought I had fixed that. But the biggest thing that you want to go through is Leonard Peikoff's Introduction to Logic series right here. And that's a good, 10, 15 hours of audio just to get through that. And you probably should listen to that like 8 or 10 times. It's a real butt kicker when you go through that and figure out how poor your so-called critical thinking is, when you start out studying all that. But if you stick with it, after about 2 years, for me it was right just before the 2 year mark. It all really started to kick in and flow, and not the crazy way, but in a good way. Thanks, Polygonal. He said he's been listening since the beginning. Wow, I didn't know that. So he says, truly grateful for the work. It's been an amazing journey in search of truth. Glad to be here with you, and I really appreciate all your support, Polygonal. I've spoken to him before on the phone. Maybe he and I should do a show. He'd probably be a good person to have join up in the roundtable discussion sometime. He's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah, I agree.
Sanchez would be another guy that would be funny to bring on. Have you watched some of Sanchez's stuff?
I haven't. I'll have to check. I'll look into it right now.
Now he's got snatches up on his username, but
Mm,
he's got a funny channel where he makes fun of Morrissey and stuff, and
hmm
it's pretty good stuff. But here he is right here. I'm going to show that on screen. There's snatches. But yeah, there's his little channel and his stuff. He's pretty funny though. He's got some good comedy skits. I love his comedy on Morrissey. It's absolutely hilarious. But anyway, so what should we get into first? What do you want to hit first?
Um, well, I think you said you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the diet stuff because it's been quite a hot topic. Even around YouTube, a lot of people are talking about it, which is I'm glad people are having these debates and talking more about these things because it's one of the funniest, interesting things about humans is that nobody knows what diet we're supposed to eat, and everybody's arguing about it. And
Well,
it's
isn't that the truth? I mean, if you look at a horse, you're like, well, he eats grass and hay and stuff, and he'll eat oats if you want to give him grains, or if you want to feed a mouse or a guinea pig, you know exactly what to give it, or rabbits or turtles or your dog or whatever. But when it comes to people actually think that their diet is based on whatever they wish it to be. That
Mhm.
humans, like every other creature on the earth, don't have a specific diet that we should eat that keeps us the healthiest and gives us the best performance. They actually think that, you just meditate. So, and if you say Om, you can eat total crap, and people like I posted a video the other day. Whenever I post anything about veganism on my Facebook channel, all the trolls from the Mark Passio camp and the Jaina ESP people, they what they did is they took the trivium and they inverted it, and then they use it to sell their agendas like veganism and whatnot, which we've exposed as a total eugenics scam. And people, they don't even grasp. There was this guy Nathan yesterday calling me a fraud and all this stuff because and they'll use loaded words like carnist and all of these emotional words, and you're a barbarian, and it's all this name calling stuff, but they don't focus on biology. They don't understand basic things like ketosis. They don't understand phytic acid, oxalic acid, lactic acids, etc. That can cause all of these different health problems. Where these issues are coming from, and they think that hey, the liver can produce some amount of cholesterol, so therefore, we can just eat soybeans and vegetables and kale, and that's going to be enough for a healthy diet. As long as we wish and say Om, and then Caleb, did you know if you have that diet that you'll be more spiritually evolved than everyone else, and you can look down on them and bash them for not being a vegan?
Oh, I did. Yeah, it makes you lighter, right? And then you can
I
ascend
actually
easier,
see
right?
people floating who are vegans. You've seen that, right? They hover, and they navel gaze.
Yeah. Yeah, the funniest thing about, and I can joke about veganism a lot because I was a vegan for a while. And, I got to look back at myself and, kind of, I have to admit that I was wrong and, learn from my mistakes and, be able to laugh about it. And, that's one thing that you do notice when you're involved in the whole circle, because what you do is you look for like-minded people, so you end up meeting a bunch of other like-minded people. uh, you start to realize how unhealthy everybody really is, and come on, let's be honest, if you're in everybody has an excuse for that when you confront them about it. But if you really are honest about it and not trying to confirm your own biases, you have to admit you look around, you see a lot of ego stroking and a lot of appeals to emotion. And now that I can step back and look back at how I was, you know man, I feel bad because I used to tell people, you'd get so convinced of something that, and you'd want to argue it because you have to defend it, and then you get defensive, right? And that's what we see. These people attack us. This is how they
If you
attack
spend a
us.
whole bunch of money on bullshit rather than admitting it's bullshit and you got had, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
sit there and defend it till the death.
Mm-hmm. And so
I'm gonna show while you're talking. I'm gonna show a
Mhm.
photo on screen of what I looked like after about 10 years of veganism, and it's not too pretty. So this is in. I'm gonna show this one. Here's a good one. This is in 2009. This is in El Salvador in front of the airport, and yeah, I survived El Salvador. That should be on a bumper sticker. But I'm going to pull up a couple more here in a second. Sorry, you go ahead and fill in while I'm looking for this.
No, that's good. Yeah, that's good stuff. So I wish I had a before and after. I'm gonna have to put something together because it's a crazy transformation. Um, I I was 185 pounds. I started cutting foods out of my diet in the beginning, just making a food log because I was doing my best to try to figure out how to cure my asthma, and I had sinus issues. So I had inflammation problems, and it took me forever. It took me years to figure out what it actually was. But for a while, I just figured, well, let me just switch my diet. All these people are telling me, I'll feel better if I cut meat out. Um,
This
so I
is
tried it. Go
sorry.
ahead.
This is me the day after I got out of the ICU in Peru, and on exiting the hospital, I weighed 114 pounds, and that's me with the belt on the tightest loop, barely keeping my pants up.
Mm. That's a very similar story to what I'll put together something eventually here so people can see the transformation. Honestly, now I'm probably in some of the best shape I've been since my 20s, and I think this is how a lot of people get pulled into the veganism thing. So you get to the point where you realize if I just start cutting some things out of my diet, I will feel better. So you start cutting out, processed foods and, really poor quality meats, and you start cutting out, you know, preservative and all these different things one by one, and you start to feel better. You really do. So then what I did was I decided, well, I'll go vegan. I'll see how I feel without it. Well, and so I was told by a lot of different people that, there's all these high inflammation diets and you have to cut out all these things that cause inflammation. And, the whole thing about the acid alkaline scale, which, by the way, I should mention real quick what I learned back in the day, because I got a health certification from Dr. Morse, who is a practicing detoxification specialist, is what he calls himself. And I also learned a bunch of stuff from a guy named Dr. Sebi. A couple of guys, posting a bunch of stuff on YouTube about diet, and I got into it. I tried it. I went through all these different phases where I just kept cutting out more and more and getting cleaner and cleaner and spending more on organic, and all, getting rid of all the crap. And so of course you're going to feel better than you did when you ate all the crap. Right. But the way that I see it is there's this, it's a scale. It's like a scalar linear progression, and to where I am now. And I definitely feel like I dipped because, after you start detoxing a lot of that crap, when you go to a detoxification type of a diet, you obviously start to feel a little better, but then you start to build up all these deficiencies. And that's what happened to me is I built up all these deficiencies and I started to crash and lose weight. Before people are like, well, you're doing it wrong. Because a lot of vegans will be like, oh, you're just not doing it correctly.
Oh, that's always there. Yeah, dude, you import all the unsustainable stuff from Asia, like coconut oil and all that kills the orangutans, and you get all the best vitamins and this and that. But, it's like after I was vegan, I go into this like organic market on these people. Oh, like we have all of this, vegan stuff. You want to try some? And they were like offering food. And I was like, no, thanks. And I'm like, it's not healthy. And they're like, well, you just take supplements. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just eat a healthy diet to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
If you have to take that many supplements that you import from Asia and the Philippines, and, you got to get, you have to consume enough avocados to give you diarrhea every day to get, enough fats from the avocado. And most people don't even get the fat issue. But I'm going to show one more photo on screen here. So this photo here is of me and my son on his 3rd birthday. Now, in this photo, I was actually released from the hospital for 1 hour, and because they were afraid I was going to live through the night, and it was my son's birthday, so they let me out, and hoping that it would give me the strength to live through the night so that they could begin treatment the next day. And in this photo, on my right arm, the IV is hanging out of my arm and stuff, but it's underneath my shirt there. But anyway, so this is it. Here's my son and I on his 3rd birthday, on my 3rd birthday, goodness. But it's kind of fuzzy. I don't know why I pulled up a fuzzy one there. But anyway, hanging out of my right arm here, it's not even zooming in properly, is an IV hanging down there. And I was only supposed to be out of the hospital for 1 hour. And the place where we held the birthday party was across the street from the hospital. But I was gone for 2 hours and ate a bunch of junk food and Jell-O and stuff. And being around my kid for a couple hours, I had the strength and was able to make it through the night. But they actually, that morning, the morning of this photo, they came into my room and told me that they didn't expect me to make it through that night. And I weigh about 113 pounds right here. But all of this was from veganism. Now, somebody made a snide comment in the chat a minute ago about people need to lose 20 to 50 pounds, just saying. And what the misunderstanding is what causes obesity and all of these health problems. And it's grains, it's wheat, it's sugar, it's your soda pop. It's not the meat, butter, and eggs. It's not what they tell us it is. They tell us, oh, if you eat meat, butter, eggs, if you eat your bacon, if you eat all this stuff, that's what's going to cause your heart disease and kill you. What people don't realize is heart disease, and I've interviewed Kate Ramblou a couple of times on the show. I recommend people check out her work. But from her work, she shows that it's a mix of vegetable oils with calcium from not having enough vitamin K2, along with the LDL cholesterol from grains, primarily wheat, and that these things, make a big glob in your veins, and that's what causes heart attacks, and they tear up your arteries. And the tears, your body produces cholesterol to repair the tears, but this is actually causing damage that the body can't really repair. And back in 2011, I interviewed the famous Dr. William Davis, the author of Wheat Belly. That episode is called Wheat is Murder, for those of you who want to check it out in the archives. And he showed and he's written a book on it, like I said, but he showed through his patients and his practice that if he made all of his patients sign a contract 3 months before surgery that they swore not to eat any wheat, he discovered that he didn't need to do heart operations anymore. And so when I interviewed him at that point, he hadn't done any operations for 4 years, just cutting his patients off of wheat and grains. But you have all of these Passio Camp people that are so into promoting all this stuff, and meat is the cause of all cancer, and meat is the cause of all heart disease and all these evil things. Actually, it's not. And then they'll conflate things like factory farming with organic and with hunting and grass-fed and all of this stuff, and try to make it a thing. And what they always do is this virtue signaling. Like I started off at the beginning of the show, if you're a vegan, you're more spiritually evolved, and you actually float above the ground, and you can sneer at everybody and put them down because they don't eat only plants. And so this is what we see them doing is this constant virtue signaling. It's a moral superiority complex, which all cults have. And this is one of the signs that it is a cult. But, there's two groups of people that I find in life that always tell you what they are within about 10 minutes of meeting them. And that's Jews and vegetarians. When you meet somebody who's Jewish, within 10 minutes, they almost always tell you they're Jewish. No other culture or group of people does that. Not at all, period, across the board. You never meet a Chinese person unless you ask them, they don't go around, oh, I'm Chinese, I'm Japanese, I'm Mexican, I'm this, But vegans, they're always going to tell you, and Jews are always going to tell you. It's rather humorous. But, so it's just all of this virtue signaling and all of this moral superiority complex. And meanwhile, they treat everybody around them like shit, and you put everybody down, and they call you a carnist and they'll call you a barbarian. They'll call you all these crazy names, and every single one of them. This is why we call them NPCs, because they all use the exact same arguments, and they're always distorted, unfact-checked. There's a reason why these people are called soy boys and whatnot, because when you don't get the fats that you need, you look like I used to, and you're skinny, you're not getting proper nutrition, you're gaunt, and a lot of these people actually look very effeminate, and thanks everybody in the chat for the, happy anniversary and all that. But, it's just so prevalent within the vegan community. Vegetarians way less so than vegans, but vegans, they gotta beat everybody over the head with this stuff. And meanwhile, all of the staples of the vegan diet are toxic. The grains, toxic. And thanks, $10 for 10 years, says Sanchez, much appreciated. By the way, please throw Caleb some money too, and support the show and all the stuff that we're doing. But legumes, phytic acid, lectins are a huge problem with a lot of the vegetables, especially the deadly nightshades. But when you start really looking into all this stuff, like kale, all of those staples of the vegetarian diet are all poisons, and so people think that they're going to evolve with this special diet, and they're going to levitate and, be superior to everybody, because, they do this, and, they're morally superior because animals have emotions too, and we're causing fear in the animals when we hunt them or whatever, and it's all of these emotional arguments that they make rather than looking at facts and biology. If we look historically speaking, are there any societies that survived from veganism? The answer is no. They all died. They all got wiped out. You end up with so many, diseases, degenerative diseases, that you just can't make it. Not only that, your brain is 77+% cholesterol and burns saturated fat. So why are you starving your brain of cholesterol and fat? If and you have to stop and ask yourself, why are they telling us to eat a low-fat, low cholesterol diet like veganism if our brains are made of fat and cholesterol? So this is, should be your tell that this stuff is a fraud, and and they don't want to admit this, And Brian Kerr, thanks for the 5. He says, my weight went down to the same weight I was when I was 20 years old and lost all of my ache on my back, which I had had for 20 years. Don't eat wheat. And that's true, and wheat is what put me in the hospital, is the wheat and vegetarian diet. And what happens is the vegetarian diet is, especially the vegan diet, is really a sugar diet. All the juices you take, all of the processed foods, whatever, all of the juicing that you do, all that stuff is sugar. So what had happened is it was feeding all of this nasty bacteria in my gut that wouldn't have been there if I had enough fat and enough salt in my diet. Of course, the low salt thing is usually coupled with it. And then all of this stuff just built up. And, and for the first few months of being vegetarian, I felt really good. And everybody starts off the same. Well, if you're, like you said, you're eating all this toxic stuff and you start taking all these things out, you're going to feel good. But after about the 3-month mark, that's really when your detox should end with veganism. And you need to go back to eating meat and protein and things like that. And not only that, like beef contains all the vitamin B complexes that keep vitamins that keep you from losing your mind. So what's interesting that I usually see is vegans, they start hallucinating from the low cholesterol, low fat, low vitamin diet, and then that's what gives them their feeling of being spiritually superior to everyone else around them. And I also find that vegan men are very often raised by single mothers where they think very emotionally, and were never, taught to hunt and whatnot as children. In my case, I was taught to hunt, and I never, fully bought into it as like you're going to be more spiritual or whatever than anybody else. But, at least I had that backbone of being taught and being initiated, in manhood with hunting and things like that, to be able to, at some point, I mean, obviously I had to go through 5 days in the ICU before I went, hey, and nearly died in the hospital. But, to find my way back and rebuild myself. And it took me a couple of years of eating the high-fat diet to get to a point where I felt, where I was 100% cured again. And, it was I consider veganism the single stupidest thing that I've ever done to myself in my life.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. There are, I've talked to a couple people who had um, the same problems that I have had after veganism. And, you start to realize that you can damage your body almost permanently if you stay on the diet too long. There's not much you can do to prevent a lot of the deficiencies from just ruining things. Like, especially one thing I had to deal with was trying to implement fats again into my diet after being vegan and vegetarian for so long. My gallbladder wasn't even producing bile like it should have. And my liver probably had a bunch of, stones and whatnot in there. Even though as a vegan, I was doing all the cleanses, all the liver cleanses and the gallbladder cleanses and doing the fasting. And, I tried it all, before people are like, well, you were just doing veganism wrong, or you weren't doing the right vegetarian. It's like, man, I am very scientific when I research things. And especially, I didn't have the trivia. I wish I had the trivium that when I was doing the veganism stuff, because I fell for a whole lot of stuff that I had to learn the hard way. And, sometimes we have to learn the hard way. And, unfortunately, it was a very deep hole I had to dig myself out of. And, everybody who knows me is just really happy that I don't do it anymore. I was always telling everybody, the argument about the teeth and, how we're not omnivores, we're frugivores or vegetarians, by our anatomy, and comparing all the different charts and doing all that. Right. And, at first sight, when you look at some of that stuff, it's like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Little did you know, if you just look into it a little bit deeper, you figure out, no, that's, these are just arguments. These are arguments that they're hoping that people just get hooked in without digging any deeper. And a lot of people are, like, just to play devil's advocate, it took me years to figure out that it was as dangerous as it was. So, I'm admitting that. And, I hope other people out there that are highly invested in their belief system and they're defending it so much are at least just open to being wrong about it. Cause that's what it took for me. I just needed to be open to the idea that, okay, well, maybe, it isn't just, what I'm doing. Cause I would keep having symptoms. I'd be like, okay, well, I just need to cut this other thing out of my diet and keep cutting this other thing out of my diet. And eventually I went from a vegetarian to a vegan to a fruitarian. I was a fruitarian for a while.
I tried that for like 2 days and I said, forget this crap.
Well, I mean, and so the argument about the fruitarian stuff that you'll get from people is that, well, it's complex sugars that are bad. So all sugars are bad, but complex sugars are different than simple sugars, and that simple sugars are found in fruit, which don't have the same effect on the body and don't require insulin. And that's the thing is, you don't get the
I
diabetes.
have a talk from this doctor up in the Bay Area that breaks all that down and destroys that whole argument about the
Mhm.
complex sugars and shows that fructose is just as bad, if not worse, because it doesn't show up in diabetes tests, but that doesn't mean it's not spiking everything and causing all these problems.
Yeah, and and that's the thing. I had to learn this stuff the hard way. And that's why I brought all that up, because it's like, well, people will say, well, you're not doing the one I'm doing. It's like, well, bro, honestly, I experimented and I took food logs and I got as in depth as I could. And you know, I I would just end that part of that conversation that I've had with people by saying, look, the day I tried meat, I tried all these different things for a long time. The day I tried meat, my friend talked me into it. He's like, dude, just come have a burger with me, see what happens. I tried it. I didn't get sick. A lot of people say they get sick. I didn't. I felt great. I was like, okay, you can. It's interesting. You take all the emotional arguments away from it about animals and all that, and you just observe nature and the whole natural law that we talk about. It just seems more natural that humans eat meat. And when you eat meat and you haven't for a really long time, you feel. I felt normal again. And from that day forward, I started getting gains back, which I was, trying to bodybuild in the gym on a vegan diet and whatever. And, people are telling me to just load on sugars like dates, like eating boxes of dates and eating tons of, chlorella and, pond scum, all this stuff. And, I tried all of it. None of it worked. And the thing you'll also notice in the whole community, like I did, you'll go look at people making videos saying that they are vegans, and I gain, all these like vegan gains and all these people. It's like, I had 10 subscriptions to YouTube channels that people started off vegan bodybuilders, grabbing all these people in. And I started to realize over the years, you could see them shrink a little bit. A lot of them would shrink over time. And then eventually they would say, okay, well, now I'm switching to vegetarian diet because I got to have eggs and milk. And, as soon as they go on eggs and milk, and they're doing whey protein at that point, and then they're, they have all the amino acid profiles that you would get from meat,
Look at, on screen, I'm showing this video called Vegans, the epitome of malnourishment. And you see all of these people have no muscle mass. They start getting very gaunt. They look like skeletons, but they get extremely skinny. Like if you notice, like, I showed my photos from when I was in Peru, just out of the hospital. And, there's no muscle mass on me. That's the same thing. It took me years to rebuild the muscle mass. But look at just how skinny and gaunt these people are. I mean, they're extremely unhealthy, and all of them are going to, they all lose their health. Some of these people in here, started out just absolutely gorgeous, and then, after a couple of years, their health was just absolutely destroyed. But they can't, admit it. Like, this woman started out really beautiful, but look how sucked in, and her eyes are bugged out here. And if you go through, you can see these people, wasting away and getting more and more unhealthy. I mean, this guy actually thinks that is the epitome of health right there. I mean, it destroys you. And, soy is used by a lot of people for veganism. And what people don't realize is it's very high in phytoestrogens. And originally, soy was used in monasteries in Asia by the men to lower sexual activity because they were all men in a monastery. So they wanted to eliminate sexual activity. So this is why they consume soy. And, that's why we have soy boys today, because all of these processed foods, have soy in them. And so we see the effects of all of this high, this phytoestrogen in the diets. And, those of you mothers who refuse to breastfeed your children and give them soy milk, and there's some vegans that actually are dumb enough to think that babies shouldn't get breast milk, and they try to force this on their children, and every year babies die. But, the soy milk is filled with estrogen and, feminizes baby boys and masculinizes baby girls right from the get-go. And you have to, if you're feeding your child formula, I mean, it's just absolutely insane. Stay away from that stuff if you possibly can. And, so soy, all of these things lead to, and I always explain to people, and the Mark Passio camp and the extreme Vigo Satanists, they will, always use all of these crazy arguments of carnism and, attack everything. And I remember speaking to Mark in January 2015 about veganism being eugenics. And then I see him, if I recall correctly, him out even more heavily promoting it after that conversation. It was like, wait, what the heck? It's like I exposed MK Ultra as the psychedelic revolution, and then he's bringing, people like Dennis McKenna to the Free Your Mind conference to promote this stuff that we had already exposed as MK Ultra and CIA disinformation. But so going back to the model of the brain being about 77% cholesterol and burning saturated fats, well, so is your reproductive system, and those of you who have low testosterone problems, that's because you don't eat enough fat and cholesterol. It's not because you didn't get enough drugs from your doctor. That's dumb, very dumb. All it means is you need to go hunt and eat the meat and eat the fat and eat some bacon and eggs and cheese, buy some raw milk. Thankfully, our local grocery store up here on the mountain sells raw milk, so I don't have to travel more than a mile to get it. But this is why you have testosterone problems and low drive problems. And, one thing I noticed when I quit veganism was my mental clarity went, shot dramatically up. And I went from being able to string maybe 10 to 20 thoughts together to being able to string easily upwards of 60 to 80 thoughts and pull everything full circle without the terrible brain farts. And, so that was really nice, but, sleeping patterns improved, et cetera, but, so if you're eating grains, which is sugar, and sugar, which is sugar, and you're juicing, which is sugar, and you're taking all of this sugar, you're poisoning yourself. And then potatoes, that's starch and sugar. Veganism is a sugar diet. And eventually, I get some of you who have done it for 6 years or 10 years or 20 years. I lasted 10 years before I spent 5 days in the ICU and nearly died on my son's 3rd birthday. So, I stuck it out for way too long, and I should have given up far sooner. I shouldn't have done it beyond 3 months, if at all, but, it's like people don't get it. Anyway, I don't know how much I want to say on the veganism topic. We've already spent like 30, 40 minutes on it.
Yeah, well, just one last thing. One thing that I wanted to say that was important for me to learn was the acid alkaline thing about what they teach you in all these like more new agey veganism, type places. They'll teach you that cancer can't survive in an acidic environment and all this stuff. And actually what I learned, it took me forever to figure this out, man. I wish I would have figured this out earlier, but you don't want to, your stomach acid needs to be acidic. And if, they've got all these people drinking this alkaline water and like buying these expensive machines that turn their water alkaline and eating lots of high alkaline fruits and stuff like that. And, vegetables are alkaline, that's their whole argument, right? Well, if you unbalance your acidity in your stomach, you can't digest and uptake the fat soluble vitamins. And that's a huge reason why people get vitamin deficiencies. And that happened to me. So when I became more acidic was when I got even a better breakthrough with my health, was when I actually started to be able to digest my food better, was when I started drinking apple cider vinegar and whatnot. But yeah, so that's just another thing. But yeah, we could probably talk a lot about this.
I might as well bring up a couple more points. There's somebody in the chat, Sweetener 12. Is this a vegan bashing channel now? See, they always have this absurd emotional thinking. Just Jan ate bulk grains and made himself sick. No, I followed the whole pattern. I did the whole thing. It was an outbreak of Helicobacter pylori. It was the total shutdown of my intestinal tract from the grains and things, because then you have to seek other things like grains and legumes become the source of most of your proteins, so those things cause inflammatory responses in the gut. And so, and she says, meat eating is gluttony. So actually the word gluttony comes from the word gluten, which is wheat. You might want to be aware of that, sweetener 12. But, so notice all of the emotional appeals that this person is using rather than, taking a, break and looking at the facts. It's their cult. It's their religion. They have to defend it at all cost. So they're going to insult everybody around them and say, rather than using the trivium and looking at the facts, is this a vegan bashing channel now? And then they're going to switch the argument and make an excuse about it. He made himself sick and meat eating is gluttony, and they'll throw things out like meat is murder and all of these emotional appeals. Never mind, we actually, throughout history, women are gatherers, men hunters, period, full stop. It doesn't matter what social engineering crap you've been fed through the Esalen Institute and through the New Agers and through the Satanists and, quote-unquote former Satanists. The biggest lie of the Satanist is that they're no longer a Satanist. Meanwhile, they still sell you all of the satanic agenda and the Discordian music and the inversion of the trivium and the veganism and all of this stuff. How could I say that veganism is satanic? Well, if you read the Bible, start out with, say, for instance, Revelation 14:2, it talks about how only the weak eat only vegetables or only herbs. And those who are strong in faith can eat other foods and won't, fear their spiritualness. What people need to realize is that all life comes from the consumption of other life, full stop. Mm-hmm. We have to consume life to live, whether it's plants or animals. Other animals eat other animals, insects eat other animals and each other, and birds eat the insects, and the cats eat the birds, and the sharks eat the cats, and the other fish, and the blah, blah, blah. I mean, it would have to be a swimming cat, obviously. Catfish, right? But anyway, so, people get so caught up in the rhetoric, and men who are vegan really have a bad problem because they haven't been initiated into adulthood as a man with the hunt. I mean, one of the most spiritual experiences as a man I've ever had was when I went duck hunting for Christmas, and I'm out there as this duck is dying, and I'm there with it and telling it thank you, and I could see the whole cycle of life and death, before my eyes, like the universe was showing me, this is your true nature right here, and you can just see how these soy boy beta males and these emotional thinkers like Sweetener 12, how they can't look at the facts. Women who are vegan will enter, strict vegans, especially from their teenage years onward, will often enter menopause by age 29. Why is that? If veganism is so good for you, why are you entering menopause over a decade early? You have to think, why does being a vegan make your hair start falling out and your teeth start rotting and this stuff? And furthermore, if we're vegan animals, why do women have breasts and make milk for babies? That should tell you right there that we're not vegan creatures. And, we see European countries now passing laws against vegans feeding, newborns a vegan diet because every year some idiot vegan starves their child to death. And so, Italy and other countries have actually had to pass laws about this because of how many children have died from this. And I've, you go through these, veganism, the epitome of malnutrition videos, and you see these kids, their teeth are totally screwed up and everything. And, Sally Fallon is the head of the Weston A. Price Foundation. Well, Dr. Weston A. Price, back in the day, he showed that people who were deficient in fats and things like that got extremely crooked teeth. And so you can see the damage done from the malnutrition from the vegan diet. It's just not common sense, You have to deny everything your body is telling you. And all of these vegans, you see them getting sick, and rather than saying, hey, this isn't working, they lie to themselves and oh, well, I have to be vegan. I just can't hurt a poor little animal. They're so cute. I'm going to show a photo of a piggy, like Jaina ESP and these people. Oh, and we're going to use all of these emotional appeals. And what they do is they twist the trivium upside down and use it for moral superiority arguments and virtue signaling and stuff like that, and pretend they're using the trivium. No, the trivium is who, what, where, when, why, and how. And it's looking at things factually, not using your fallacies and name calling and screaming carnist and all of this, mindless idiot stuff. I was a vegan for let's say I was vegetarian for 10, 12 years total. And I was vegan for about half that. And most of the damage was caused when I was a vegan. So I've been there, done it. I went through the whole gauntlet. Sorry, folks, just like so many others out there, I got sick. And if you don't get sick from it and it doesn't kill you, you're just lucky, And not only that, you're sourcing your fats and stuff. The avocados are grown in California or Mexico. If you're living in New York, there's no avocados grown in New York. I've never seen a coconut tree grown in New York, folks, or in Canada or anywhere else. They grow in Asia, where the orangutans are, and they have to, a lot of the orangutans get killed from all of the palm kernel and coconut oil production, and then there's the fact of these huge, tractors going through the fields of these crops, soy, corn, wheat, all these, crops. The wildlife, the small wildlife, is killed. The mice, the snakes, the foxes, the birds, the insects, all of that stuff is killed. So you guys aren't, perfectly innocent, floating on a pillow, moral superiority, any of that stuff. It's all phony baloney. And not only that, you go around treating everybody like shit. And everybody's sick and tired of you vegans and how you treat everybody. It's absolutely terrible. Nathan, Sean, all you people, all of you Passio people, all of that, it's nonsense. All you're doing is it's eugenics. And, and it's like, Plato discussed this in the Republic, how veganism was used for eugenics. They've been doing this for thousands of years. They get you on a diet. They sell it to you as a religion and how you're superior. And meanwhile, your brain isn't functioning. You can't think well. Your body's failing you, and you treat everybody like crap. And you're so out of your mind from being fat starved, you think you're superior to everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Well said, my friend. I agree 100%. Now, a lot of people in the chat are asking questions about diet. Now, I'm kind of hesitant to give any diet information like I used to about, exactly what I think people should do. But I tell people to use the trivium. I don't want to tell people what to think. So I would just at least recommend you get both sides of the story, or all sides, that all the grammar you can gather before you get real defensive about these things. One thing that I will mention that helped me, if you guys are looking for more grammar, there's a documentary on YouTube that I watched called the NWO, New World Order Diet, the first ever anti-vegan documentary. See what they have to say. Be open. Go watch that. There's some good stuff in there. I also personally, I like to watch a lot of Dr. Berg videos. You can look him up. I think he's got a lot of the things that he's said in his talks I've implemented into my diet, and it's worked out great, and I'm very thankful for that. So that's all I can say. I'm not going to tell people exactly what to do, but definitely do as much research and get as much grammar as you can, and be open to being wrong about your convictions in your diet. You get so defensive, and when you get defensive, it shows how shaky your foundation is when you're
like Sweetener 12. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and Anthony put up a super chat for $5. He says Rosicrucians are big on veganism. I should have pulled that up in the brain database. So before we switch topics, let me do that here. So let's see. So veganism. And we have that under population, eugenics and population control. And let's see, in here, we have the Fabian Society, Fourth World Wilderness Conference, Annie Besant. You've got, all of it ties into all of the Agenda 21. Meanwhile, they're, telling us to be vegans while they take all of the best food. But, you got to realize, folks, that this is an agenda being sold here. Just because it sounds crazy because you did no research on it, that it's eugenics, doesn't mean that it's not. You have first ask, how does eugenics work? If I'm starving my brain and my reproductive system, if I enter menopause at 29, is that not eugenics? Is that not ending your ability to reproduce? Is that not lowering your fertility? Does that not increase your chances of having a miscarriage, etc.? I mean, talk to Dave Asprey about this. He puts, he's got his Better Baby book and having, women get on a high-fat diet and all of this stuff and eating healthy foods to have a children. He's not selling, veganism. And, you'll see women's teeth get, start cracking and stuff. But in that video, one of the guys, he's screaming at the camera about being a vegan, and his front tooth flies out of his mouth on camera. I'm not sure if it was part 2 or 3, but look at atypical, no muscle mass, gaunt, sucked in. Look at these people. And this woman is just beautiful, and she's sitting here, going on years of veganism, and she's her health is totally failing her, and here she's drinking her sugar juice and thinking it's healthy, but she can't admit to herself that it's wrong. This guy, if you watch him for just a minute here, his tooth goes flying out of his mouth here while he's screaming and ranting and raving like a typical vegan. This is the crazy that vegans act like. This is what happens when your brain is starved out. And watch this. Here it goes. Ah! And it should just fly out of his mouth here any second. Sorry, I was hoping to get to it quicker. There it goes. Flew out of his mouth. So, I mean, really, folks, is that not the epitome of malnutrition? They look like they've been in a concentration camp, not on a healthy diet. So, somebody's asking if I've done more grammar on Kurt Doolittle's CIA connections. Kurt Doolittle doesn't hide it. He admits he's a CIA contractor. That's not even a valid question. You can just ask him. The Dashing Rogue asks, do you think it should be a balance between meat and other foods? Humans are adaptable, along with the fact the food pyramid was inverted. Well, if the food pyramid was inverted, that's the best start. I personally follow a diet of about 50 to 70% saturated fats, 20% meats, 20% vegetables, and like 5% fruit. And I try to avoid grains except maybe white rice. And I try to, most of the time, avoid the deadly nightshades, which are potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, and peppers. And there's a reason why they're called deadly nightshade. 3 words of death and darkness there to warn you that they're bad. But I don't think there is any balance. I don't think there's any room for especially wheat in the diet. And I interviewed Dr. O'Brien a few years back, and he pointed out that eating wheat even once can cause an immune response that lasts 3 to 6 months, before your immune system gets itself back in order. So that doesn't seem like something that we should be doing to ourselves. And here we are at 53 minutes already. We still haven't even gotten off this one topic.
Yeah, let's switch it up. There's a lot we could talk about any topic. It seems like just endlessly. So we need to keep on top of that.
Please throw us some love, folks. 10-year anniversary donation. Please help out. Try to share with you all of our research and everything. Please donate to Caleb as well. mick.caleb@gmail.com. We greatly appreciate any and all support. And so let's see here. You know what? I want to just show on screen a little bit of this Fiona Barnett interview that I did back in 2016. I never released it. The interview was absolutely atrocious. 10 minutes into the interview, I realized she was selling a hill of beans. So I'm gonna. Here's Fritz Springmeier's book. She cites Fritz Springmeier, but here's Fritz Springmeier's book on the CIA's own website there. But I just want to go through some of this stuff. What I've done is I've taken this video and I've turned it into a pop-up fallacies video. And I was thinking about killing the pop-up fallacies project. Nobody took part in it, but we might as well use her as a prime example of somebody who's creating a Nazi witch hunt to go after dead people rather than real living pedophiles. So that's really her agenda. Let me see. I don't really want the audio playing on that. Let me see if I can find which one is. There it is. All right. So she's got just all of these fallacies going on. And, so we've got the fallacy counter down there running. And, she really racks them up. She's just an amazing piece of work there. But she, when I didn't release this video quick enough, she immediately started publishing hit pieces against me all over the internet. And, of course, she worked with Alfred Lamont Weber, the Yale Juris Doctor, who also works with the Passio camp, ironically, going around selling, the UFO space orbs come and steal Earth water and this kind of stuff. And he actually worked for the New York Environmental Agency, and he also worked with SRI that we've shown as having major connections to the CIA. And actually, when I discovered some of the stuff about him, he actually went on Wikipedia and had it all removed. But yeah, so he was Yale Law School. He's a JED Fulbright scholar. Ding, ding, ding. New York City Environmental Protection Administration, and Stanford Research Institute. So this is top level disinformation caveat, in my opinion. But he also worked with Kevin and Adder. They lived together or something, and that's been exposed for a long time as well. And I, years ago, mistakenly interviewed Kevin before I figured out what was going on there. But that's who these people are working with. I suspect she's Australian Security Intel or one of those. But some shady stuff going on there, in my humble opinion. But those of you who are interested in looking her up, you can go into the database and see that stuff. And I will try to get this stuff done soon. We've got just so many just shallow, fallacious arguments going on here with her stuff. But that'll be a good project. At least we can, the time to record this interview won't be a complete waste. It can at least be used as a tool to teach others how this type of stuff works.
Yeah, and actually, a lot of people are excited for us to start doing more like pop-up fallacies type stuff. We were just discussing, Jan and I, before we went live, that we'd really like to do a show that we kind of pre-record, whatever it may be that we're gonna deconstruct and show the fallacies as a group in the Roundtable. I think that would be a really cool thing to help people out. Start practicing getting through all those fallacies.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it, really. I mean, we could probably, I don't know. I mean, Joe Rogan has shut down my channel before, but I was just thinking how great it would be to start taking video clips of, his interviews and stuff and just doing pop-up fallacy videos. But I don't know. We could probably start some project with it. The whole goal with it was for people to download the pop-up fallacy stuff and make their own videos and submit them so that we could all, learn while we were making the videos, learn the trivium, learn how to make videos, learn the fallacies all at the same time. I never had one single video submission, and I even had a couple people email me and, swear up and down that they were actually going to do it and follow through. And of course they never did either. But,
I've been saving screenshots. I don't know how much it'll help everybody else, but I've been saving screenshots of my interactions with with people pointing out fallacies, and if somebody else points me out on a fallacy that I made, and you'll see people double down, you'll get into an argument with them or a discussion, and then they'll just keep adding more and more to that, and then you just keep pointing them out, and it ends up being a thread full of fallacies with good examples. So I'll take a picture of it, and it helps me when I review that stuff to you'll see errors in your own work as well. Sometimes you'll misidentify one, and it just helps the repetition and the practice. Practice makes perfect. So I think it's a good idea that we do that.
Zombie Bars is asking if the keto diet is a waste of time. I would say 100%, absolutely, beyond any doubt, no.
It's helped me quite a bit, and I'm completely open to it being wrong, but I will say from my personal experience so far, I have had only benefits so far.
Absolutely. I've been on the ketogenic diet for 5 years, maybe almost 6 years now, and I would say it's had the most benefit of anything I've done in my life. I have more energy, more mental clarity. I've cured all of my stomach illnesses. I was told by the doctors that I would not live beyond 45. I'm 47 now. They said I would never be off my medications. I was in and out of hospitals for 15 years, and I've been off all medications since 2010 or 2011 now, so that's 7-8 years. Harry Jimenez or Harry Himes says he lost 130 pounds on the ketogenic diet. Exactly. And I've had, I usually get people write me almost every day, maybe several times a week, that they've lost a significant amount of weight on the ketogenic diet and have repaired health problems. A friend of mine lost 55 pounds in about 3 months just cutting wheat and pretzels from his diet. Mark Warhol, who is often on the Logos Roundtable shows, he lost about 35 pounds in 2 months just from cutting wheat from his diet. He used to have a pretty decent beer gut, and it disappeared in 2 months. And I've not seen anything but positive come out of it. And in fact, I haven't even announced this previously, but I might as well do that now. I'm not trying to self-aggrandize here, folks. Let me see. Where did I put that? Let me see if I can find it. Goodness. So I started this website a couple of months ago, some wacky idea I had. I haven't done much with it yet, but it's called Ketosis Consultants, and about doing on-site ketosis help and stuff like that. But I haven't gotten it fully up and going yet, but that's something that I would like to do, is really help people get away from the poisonous low-fat vegan diet, that's killed and injured so many people like myself and Caleb and these people in these crazy vegan videos. Sorry, we ended up back on veganism. They managed to steer us back. Ah!
A lot of people have a lot of questions about that type of stuff, so it's going to keep popping up. But
I let me just interject here really quick, Caleb, because I wanted to mention, we were talking about this earlier, and pulling yourself out of keto, and I had mentioned that I do like a daily cycle of keto, and I wanted to mention that I do my fats and proteins in the morning, and any carbohydrates or fruits that I need, which I try to keep at no more than like 5%, I tend to eat at nighttime, and then that kind of sets you up for sleep anyway. But that way you have your high performance in the day, and then at night you've got your carbos, and then it just kind of, you wave through it. And then often once a week I'll carbo up with like a paleo pancake or something like that, but I don't eat the grains and stuff. If you don't eat sweet potatoes or yams or rarer occasion white rice, if you stay that way too long, you'll get to a point where you'll hit bottom and you won't have any energy. So, you have to sort of balance it out. That's just my personal opinion with that. And you're welcome, Lucky Son, in the chat.
Yeah, so I have, just real quick, I'm very active. I never needed to lose weight. I had a problem with gaining weight because I lost so much weight with veganism, etc. I was having a real hard time getting any gains, and I needed to get gains because I was, constantly right, racing motocross. I was, pretty much training to compete in snowboarding, and snowboarding quite a bit, and wakeboarding, doing, lots of wakeboarding, downhill mountain biking. The list goes on, but I was very, very active. And now I finally got my weight back up with my gains, and my strength is back. And it was such a huge breakthrough for me. I almost wanted to cry when I finally got back up to 175, 180 pounds. It took me 6 years to finally get back. And the biggest breakthrough that I found was intermittent fasting. For me, works really well. I don't eat past 9. I try to keep any alcohol down. That's big for me too. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, the keto doesn't work. I'm getting sick," or whatever. It's like, well, how much alcohol are you killing your liver with? And your liver's trying to digest all those fats, and the liver, and and you got this alcohol that's a solvent of oils, and anyways. But on top of that, so I still do all my competition stuff. I've been doing jujitsu and Muay Thai training and competing at least a few times a week. I go train and work out pretty much every day, and my energy levels are fine. And I pretty much I do very little carbs. I hardly ever carb up. So maybe I'll have to try every once in a while doing like you said, Jan, and maybe just try carbs every once in a while. But all I know is, I'm going to try to keep refining this, and trying to get back to the point where, I'm about to. I mean, it's crazy to me that I'm finally feeling like I did in my 20s. And now I'm almost 35. So it's a big deal to me. I'm very thankful that I came across it.
So I spent from age 20, age 25 through age 39 in and out of hospitals. And so when I went keto, my energy and strength, and I haven't worked out for a couple months right now. I need to get back to it, but I was in pretty tight shape with pretty great muscle tone up until like a month or two ago. But it took me maybe a year or 2 to 3 years to get back to that. But my health was the worst vegans out there. I mean, I was on my deathbed. They literally didn't expect me to live through the night. So, it's like, how much worse can you possibly get? And some people in there are still saying, they eat steak and potatoes, eat sweet potatoes or yams, avoid potatoes. Those are deadly nightshades. Also, I quit drinking entirely. I haven't had a drink for a while. So, lots of problems with alcohol. Probably just better not to have it. Plus, it just lowers your awareness. It causes a lot of brain cell damage and things like that, even having one drink. I remember in 2013, I was at Dave Asprey's conference, and he had this doctor presenting all these brain scans from alcohol and drug damage. Just astounding stuff, how much damage it really causes. And, we're trying to up our performance and live in truth, and there's just not much truth to consuming that sort of thing. And thanks, Hamish. He says, as always, thanks for the good work. And Brandon says, happy 10 years. Thanks, both of you, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, you and I are on the same page with all that. I agree wholeheartedly with that, for sure. And it's hard. It's really hard. And one of the hardest things about talking about this topic, I guess, like all the other topics that we talk about, is you really make enemies, because you become the projection of people's, insecurities and what they already know about themselves. And, you
get a lot of abuse from the public doing this, don't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that's what, having a really strong foundation in the trivium and in the truth. That's what saves me from really getting, anxiety from it or anything like that, or bitterness or anything. I understand. I was there. I can relate. I used to say the same things, and that's the thing, is if you're telling the truth, that's the only thing that matters. The truth doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care about your illusions. all the things you tell yourself so that you can sleep at night. The truth doesn't care. So if you're standing in the truth and telling the truth and doing your best, it doesn't bother me. And hopefully people will learn something from that. If you can live as an example and you can actually be an example of health, so that people will want to, look up to you. No one's going to look up to a lot of people that are, claiming all these health things and aren't a shining example of health, or they're cheating and not living in truth and telling somebody they're doing something, and really on the side they're taking all these supplements and stuff that they would get from just their diet.
Well, if you want, the proof is in the pudding. So exactly on the other side of the valley here is the famous Loma Linda Medical Center, or University Medical Center, and they're also one of the world's leading heart hospitals. And, so it's a vegetarian community. Why would a vegetarian community have one of the world's leading heart hospitals unless they're creating heart disease by the vegetarian diet and the low-fat, eating vegetable oils, not getting enough calcium, not getting enough vitamin K2, and eating too much grains? But in Loma Linda is a store called Clark's, and when you walk in there, the majority of the employees there are obese, and this is an organic health food store, and you just look at the people working there, and it's like, wait, are they the epitome of health? When I look at this, this vegan video, and this guy's tooth is flying out of his mouth, and they're screaming at people, and they're denying the facts that their health is deteriorating because they're not getting the fat, the cholesterol, and the vitamins from meat that they need. They're in self-denial. They are not the epitome of health, that if what they're doing is actually true. What it is it's social engineering and eugenics being sold by SRI, the Esalen Institute, the Tavistock Institute. It wreaks havoc on your sexual system, on your mental capacity. You start, ranting like a crazy lunatic, and you can see the agenda behind it. It doesn't take a lot, Sweetener 12 and these people in the chat freaking out, because we dare tell the truth on this stuff, having been vegans. No, we're not vegan bashing. We're trying to wake you people up so that you don't almost die on your kid's 3rd birthday like I did. Get a clue. I already showed the photographs on screen of me almost, dying on my kid's 3rd birthday. Folks, this is my son's 3rd birthday. That's me and my son right there. My son's 3rd birthday, almost died, released from the ICU for 2 hours, and the nurses were mad that I stayed an extra hour, so that I could see my son on his birthday, because they didn't think I would live through the night. How stupid can you be? It's not vegan bashing. We're waking you up and showing you, look, this is a big risk. You risk your life. It's crap. It's eugenics, and luckily, we didn't do any damage to my son from that stupid crap, So anyway, you want to talk about government by consensus for a little bit?
Sure. Did you have a specific example you wanted to get into, or just want to talk about it philosophically?
I'm just seeing it all over the place. You have all of this social media and you have all of these trolls and these AI people and these Mossad army people sitting in cubicles running, doing trolls and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And attacking anybody who tells any truth. And you can see that the goal of all of this stuff, of this leftist social engineering, is government by consensus.
Mm-hmm.
Got anything you want to toss in on that?
So government by consensus. So controlling the people by convincing them all to convincing the mob to jump on a bandwagon is it's a big bandwagon fallacy, pretty much.
Perfectly said, man.
So that's one of my biggest problems with actually philosophically, like just the socioeconomics of democracy itself, to me, is very flawed. Sorry to get kind of deep on you for a second, but so letting the majority of people who seem to be easily influenced especially by the rest of the majority, are able to make laws and change laws based on just whoever has the majority, the mob rule. That
Yeah, well,
sounds.
this isn't this exactly why it was only male landholders who were invested in the community and had something to lose that were that was originally why they were the only ones to vote before, not just any commie non-working liberal who wanted to scream and change things and steal the rights away from everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so look, guys, man, there's a hierarchy to nature and natural law. And when you observe things in nature, I know people will argue a nature fallacy, which I think is kind of silly on one hand, because it's hard to argue. Nature is what we have to observe to base our reality on, examples of thriving and surviving and going extinct and suffering and all these things. So what I observe out in nature is what I'm talking about. When I see the way that nature works, it works in a specific reason. It works the way that it works for a specific reason, and most people don't comprehend and copy nature. That's what I think is a really big problem that we're missing. We need to understand the way nature works and maybe try to copy some of the things that we see in nature that we see benefit certain species in nature, and learn from the mistakes we see as well. So one of the examples of the way that you can structure the socioeconomics is, I talk a lot about like the RK genes stuff, and you can also start to get the idea that large areas of people and big giant groups of multicultural people existing in certain spots probably wouldn't have happened without the invention of all these new technologies. So I guess you could say it's natural since we invented these technologies, correct? But on one hand, you don't see like all these brown bears and black bears and polar bears all getting together and forming, a multicultural society. So you can't leave out the whole melting pot from the whole scheme of things. It's part of it. It needs to be looked at. And part of the problem that we have now is we have the Democrats. They have realized, the left, we can just call them left. We don't have to call them the Democrats. People that lean toward the left realize that in order to get what they want, the majority mob rule fits their narrative very nicely, because all they have to do is keep importing more and more and more and more people who agree with them, who are the rabbit type mentality, the R, reproductive strategy. And they'll take over an area with the majority rule, and that's the biggest problem of all. When if the majority votes that they should take all the guns away, and all of a sudden the guns are gone and no one can defend themselves, and that seems like a good idea to the majority, until we start to realize that this is an imbalance. And that's the problem I have with it. The biggest problem that I have is nature kind of has its own balance, the way that homeostasis is kind of reached when you stop interfering with things. And that's the biggest problem I have with the left and the whole mob rule mentality, is they think they can just take over by importing. Like one example, I'll just give one example. So if they just keep importing caravans full of migrants,
with the Israeli flag flying behind them.
Yeah, obviously, to anybody who has done any research, this is weaponized anthropology, I would say. If you look into it, you'll follow the money, you'll follow the political agendas, and it's completely different than what they spin and what most people think, right? So you get them, all of a sudden they just keep importing more and more people, telling everybody else that they should just appeal to the emotions of all these people, right? As opposed to doing, there's way better solutions out there than importing them all. And then all of a sudden were being turned into the majority. All the people that probably should be making the decisions, that aren't mob rule, that are more traditional minded. And we have traditions for a reason, because a lot of things worked. And I'm not saying that all traditionalists have the perfect ideas. I'm just saying, in general, when you compare the right and the left, that's why they want a democracy so bad. And I don't think a democracy, in my opinion, is a good uh, socioeconomic scale in the first place.
No.
From a philosophical standpoint, and that would lead one to go from switching from, you start to realize, and we'll do a show on this at some point, you start to realize the further you get over to the right, the further you get over to the truth, and the further you get to the left, you get more lies. And so this right left paradigm that we see, it may have been like this from the very beginning, but the further you get over to the left, the more you get people to sway toward communism, socialism, etc. And this is the epitome of mob rule until you get all the way over to a monarchy. And when you get further and further and further to the right, it's less and less and less oppression. Most people think that the right is more, right? But obviously, I know that there's a political
well,
up and
what
down.
most people don't get is that the freedoms that they have now, they got from the right, and all of the freedom of speech and the ability for the feminists to do paintings in menstrual blood, and for Antifa to go out and bash people and do the stuff that they do. Those are all freedoms that have been provided by the right, not the left. The left doesn't ever provide freedom. They take freedom away,
Yeah, and technically, the further you get to the right, the less government
you have.
That's the biggest point. And the further, all the way to anarchy, that's like the extreme.
I don't agree with you there. I think anarchy is left. Anarchy, to me, plays right into the game of the globalists, because anything that's attacking the government, that's what they want, to destroy nationhood, so then they can bring in their globalist New World Order crap. I think that's all left. And I see the Satanists, again, that same person, like Passio, et cetera, promoting that stuff. And I don't agree with anarchy at all anymore. I used to believe in it, up until 4 or 5 years ago, started researching some of it, and I just went, whoa, and hit the brakes on that,
No, I hear you there. Let me clarify. So the further you get over to the right, you get more order too. So order doesn't always mean authoritarianism and government and organization, and it organized by a group, right? What I mean by that is I guess you'd have to define anarchy, and I don't necessarily define anarchy the same way that most of the talking heads do. And I'm not an advocate of anarchy. I'm just simply stating, for the philosophical standpoint behind the socioeconomics of the right and the left paradigm, the further you get over to the right, you do get more traditional and less government. And that's why stronger conservatives, and we're not talking about kosher conservatives who are more like in the middle. You get like the right and the left that most people think, and they're like right next to each other on this long political scale, right? And they're arguing over, the Fox News version of conservatives versus the CNN Democrats, right? It's like, no, I'm talking about a much deeper understanding about this whole thing. And these concepts, I think we could probably put together a much more coherent presentation on this.
And that goes to John Crucy just mentioned it, the left hand versus the right hand path. And in fact, that's in the notes to kind of bring up today, the right left paradigm. But what is that? Where does it come from? And as Rockin' Mr. E is shown on his channel, it comes from the Bible, and understanding that the left is Satanism. That's and I'm going to disagree with you on the monarchy thing as well, but the left is your communism, socialism, emotional thinking, voting with emotion. We have to protect everybody on the other side of the planet and not take care of our own. And of course, what they do is that, by giving people age 18 to 35 who don't have children, don't have families, the right to vote, what we get is a lot of emotional thinking. And, these people don't have children. They care more about illegal aliens coming across the border than their own neighbors and their own people. Meanwhile, states like California are entirely bankrupt because, the liberals are giving everything away and not caring for our own. There is no illegal alien, everybody's a person and all this kind of stuff. Well, here's the issue with that is we have our culture and they have theirs, and our culture isn't necessarily in balance with theirs. If you're letting lots of Muslims in who are going to bring in Sharia law and things like this, that's antithetical to our Christian system in this country. And you get more suppression, more violence, things like that. If you're allowing, MS-13 in the country, you're going to have more violence, things like that. If you're paying, and here's the thing, is the leftists, see, the right, they like to give through charities and things. What the left does to give is they have the government go and steal the money from the right and from families and people who actually produce and then disperse it to other people. They don't have any inherent generosity in themselves, so they have to give by force. And then so what they do is they want all of that money taken from those who produce, given to those who come here illegally, and then everybody else has to sustain that. Well, that's fine for a little bit, but if you keep it going, eventually those who produce on the right, those who have the families, those who make money, can't sustain all of the liberals and lazy asses on the left who, are going around with their hand out begging, and the system collapses. So that happens over and over. That's why no communes throughout the 60s, there was like 10,000 of them. None of them survived except the Tennessee Farm, and they started taking money from FEMA and creating equipment and whatnot for FEMA. So that's how they survived. And on top of that, they sell soybeans and things like that, which is a poison. So they're pretty much the only commune. There was maybe one other that survived, but all of these things collapsed because of this, this nonsense. But when you look at the right, what does it mean to be right? Well, okay, I'm right. Okay, that means I'm correct. That means some thought I've had was true. When you understand logos, that right is truth, is correctness, is righteousness. That's why it's called righteousness, because it's on the right. It's correct behavior. That's why in the Bible it says the goats go on the left. That's Baphomet. That's Satanism. That's the goat worshiping, all of that stuff. That's the left. Those are the liberals, the communists, the socialists, those people who hate freedom, etc. And then on the right, you have what is right, what is just, what is true. And then in the middle, you have the middle path, which the Bible in Revelation 3, 15, 16 explains is vomit. And is spewed out of the mouth because, you're not hot or cold, you're lukewarm. And so, you're spewed out. Now, the original Anthony just posted a $10 super chat. He says, the original dialectic in the Bible is life or death. Is it right? It is right there in the beginnings of the Bible concerning Adam and his choice between two trees. That is the purpose of life. And you're always given a choice to choose right or wrong, to choose good or bad. Do I want to help support these, poor myself? And I'm going to go give this homeless person $10 to help him through the day? Or am I going to have the government come and steal from people who actually produce to then prop everybody up? And there's the old saying, you can teach a man how to fish, or, you can give a man a fish he can eat for a day. You can teach a man how to fish he can eat for a lifetime. And so what happens is the left ends up propping everybody up, and, it's all of this emotional thinking, unsustainable thinking, and I used to live in Yugoslavia and Serbia, and it was communist then, and eventually it collapsed, and the people who still work and produce, they are less motivated because you have all these lazy sons of bitches who just feed off the system and they don't do anything. And so the left treats everybody equally, and, even though they don't do anything, well, they're still a human being, they should get the same. And then the right is like, well, it's based on your merit, what you produce, how good you perform, etc. That's what you're going to get out of it. If you don't put anything in, you don't get anything out, which is obviously common sense. So this is what happens when And it goes all the way back to the women's right to vote. Women tend to think more emotionally than men, and since women were given the right to vote, which was actually to get them taxed, no taxation without representation. It was to get them out of the home and into the factories. And since that time, we've seen a slow progression further and further and further towards communism and socialism. And a lot of people, well, England is socialist, and we're not communists. They don't get that, socialism is soft communism. They'll argue for Israel or this or that or Sweden. These are all, it's soft communism. It's not free. You're giving up a huge portion of what you pay in every month to take care of people who don't produce anything. Rather than taking care of your own life and your own future, you're relying on everyone else to take care of you until that system collapses in on itself. And in every instance that communism has been implemented, and socialism as well, it eventually collapses in on itself. It cannot sustain.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So,
wait, one more point I mentioned that I forgot to follow up on was, you mentioned anarchy or monarchy, excuse me.
Yeah.
The issue is if you could find someone like a true king, like let's say Marcus Aurelius, that would be a king who lived in Logos, and that's what the divine right of kings is. But what the issue is when you get corrupt kings. But I'm actually not, after all of the research that Holly and I have done, I'm actually no longer against the idea of monarchy. It's just that all of the monarchs have been taken over, and, the divine right of kings has been corrupted. That's a whole other long, deep discussion to go into, and people are going to flip out, oh, he's a monarchist, oh my God, oh.
No, I'm with you, man. We've had a conversation where if you compare a family unit to the idea of a monarchy, and the alpha male, and you look at that, in the K reproductive strategy we observe in species in nature, then I agree with you 100%, man. When I disagree with the monarchy is like the royal family that we have now, the illusion,
just awful,
But
wow.
I agree with you about that for sure. And none of this discussion would not be complete for me to try to, get across a lot of the things I'm talking about. It wouldn't be complete unless I kind of talked a little bit about the idea of individualism that a lot of these guys are pushing, like Sargon of Akkad and Jordan Peterson and et cetera. These guys are pushing the idea of individualism versus, and that's their counter to that's the limited hangout, that they're dragging people away from communism, which is good, dragging people away from communism and talking bad about the left, right? Or not talking bad, but saying the truth, exposing the truth about it, which is a good thing, right? But now they're taking people and they're switching people to these other limited hangouts, right? Well, in reality, you have to have that conversation where I think the biggest missing piece to all of that is one thing that's too controversial to talk about that we have to kind of tiptoe around. But the other thing is, sure, you can have a group of individuals that they all are individual as far as their psychology, and the way that they take responsibility for themselves should be individual, right? But on a massive scale, we should not have a society of individuals that are all opposed to each other. We need in-group preference.
Right. Well, with all of this diversity, that the left sells, of course, the word diversity is the same as division, divisive, etc. But they think dividing a community and dividing it up and breaking up its commonness, its homogeneousness, if you will, is a good thing, and you see every time this is done, the society collapses, and it's like Southern California is starting to look like a ghetto now, and it's like, what the hell happened, and it's like, well, it's all of this diversity that they're bringing in, but that's the point. That breaks the culture. That's why SRI, the CIA, the leftists, that's why they promote this stuff, and it's all emotional thinking. Everybody is equal. We're all good. Meanwhile, our standard of living is dropping and society falls apart and the economy falls apart, And and the leftists keep on with their charge. Yes, this is working. This is wonderful. This is great. Meanwhile, everything is falling apart. There's more homelessness than ever. And it's like, when do you wake up? And then it's okay if a company comes in and creates jobs, that's supposed to be a bad thing. But actually, I'm surprised a lot of the people in the audience were actually reacted positively when we mentioned monarchy. So that was kind of a surprise. John Creasy says culture is downstream from race. And that's true, but we're not going to talk about the blood of the lamb just yet. That's, probably a year or two out before y'all are ready for that discussion. And we got to wait for somebody to
mature mentally.
Yeah, well, we got to wait for somebody to come along to help us with that show. And so, good luck. We're praying for them to be able to come back soon and join us for that topic. So let's see. Anything else we want to talk about? I guess we covered the left-right paradigm well enough,
Yeah, I would just mention that, on top of the other things I was talking about with, the limited hangouts that these people, the problem, I like the direction of a lot of these, up and coming groups like the GDL. I like a lot of the stuff that they're doing, even though I don't necessarily agree with everything. And I think I'd really like to have more conversations with a lot of those guys. But a lot of the groups that I see out there, you'll get to the point where you're red pilled on a lot of issues, but there's a couple issues that are kind of, right there that are, how do I put it, that are stopping you from really having that huge mind grenade that kind of makes you go, okay, so that's what it is. And the thing I'm kind of starting to mention is, when you'll go through this progression where a lot of people lead up into, and they go through the whole political and socioeconomics and study all the facets of it, and then they'll kind of stop at libertarianism and the whole NAP type of mentality and stuff like that. And I would just say, before you make your mind up about any of that, really go look into the just critical race theory and all the stuff that they really are trying to hide from you about race. People are saying race isn't real and all these things. I think that's a really big mistake for people to just
Dante, et cetera.
Yeah. I like these guys like Dante. He's a cool guy. I watch some of his videos and stuff, but
yeah, he invited me on one time. It never happened. I'm not against the guy, but I mean, there is more to it than people want to admit.
Yeah, I just think I think we need to have more conversations. And I know the thing is that the conversations that we need to have are the most taboo, and they get people triggered and get people emotional, and they get people banned from YouTube, but the red pill, I'll try to keep this as EG as I can for YouTube. The thing that I wish people would look more into, the debate, there is a huge debate out there that you'll come across when if you dig deep into this, and it's the nationalism and the idea of closed borders based on an in-group preference, and every group has an in-group, and it's just like you just mentioned from the chat. Culture is downstream from race, and we need to have these conversations. We need to stop being triggered and getting emotional about this stuff. We need to emotionally mature and start looking into scientific, and have these conversations. We need to start talking more about this stuff. But the limited hangout with the NAP and the libertarian stuff is, you'll start to realize that the open borders thing just will not work. And that's what kind of just shuts down libertarianism. It's like, well, we want everybody. It's like,
here's the thing is, libertarianism is really a system propagated by beta males who can't compete with alpha males. That's what it really comes down to. And then and thank you, Rachel and Leon, who both sent $20 donations. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Dashing Rogue, etc. Oh, shoot. And I just interrupted myself and killed my own train of thought like an idiot. What was I saying?
Well, you're kind of going along the lines of multiculturalism and
Oh, shit. Now I forgot the point I was going to make. Goodness. I hate it when I do that. Sorry, folks.
it'll come back.
What were you just saying, dude? What was your point?
Well, and just let me say, I'm not saying people should be racist or any of these typical arguments that you'll get. Just realize that some of the things that you're supposed to talk about, they are trying to
yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Bernard, for that. So beta males are libertarian and they can't compete. And then libertarianism, what it does is it promotes an atmosphere of no consequences for your actions. So you can sell pornography and you can destroy families, but you don't have any consequences for the pornography that you sell. You can sell drugs. Drugs should be legalized, but you do have no responsibility for the lives you destroy. Everything goes, open borders, but you can't, protect your own families, etc. And so this breaks it down. And, in my opinion, there's a reason why libertarians use a snake in the grass for their logo. I mean, a snake in the grass, folks. Hello, it's a snake. It's a snake. And then what do libertarians do? They go to something every year called the Pork Fest, where they feed all the swine on all the BS, I mean, that should really clarify you. If you're going to an event called the Pork Fest to get free, that means you're a swine, and they're feeding you mast in the forest, They're feeding you that's actually what the word passio means. It's a word that means swine, a pannage to the forest to feed swine on mast. Here, let's look that up here. Let's see. Here we go. So if we go down here, we can see passio, pannage, liberty for hogs to run in the forest or woods to feed upon mast. So, or a pork fest, etc. So they're making fun of you. It's just like in your face kind of mockery type thing, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Feeding the pigs on, feeding the swine, feeding the herd. All of the hidden pig jokes, they love those. You have anything else you want to add, or is this a good?
Oh man, yeah, I got so much more, but we're at an hour and 41 minutes. I don't know how much longer you want to go.
Why don't we wrap it up in like 5 minutes if you want? And please support Caleb, mick.caleb@gmail.com. Support the show. Thanks everybody for your donations tonight for this long battle to reach 10 years with all of the intelligence operatives and trolls and disinformation agents trying to shut us down for years now because of what we've done. We appreciate all your support. It keeps us going. Would love to see Ernesto jump in and throw us a donation tonight. And all the rest of you, thanks so much. And thanks, I Belong in the Kitchen, for sending another batch of soap. I'm excited to get it. I really appreciate the soap donations. She makes awesome soap. Anyway.
Again, congratulations on the 10-year, man. That's a really big deal.
Yeah, somebody just mentioned Jesse Lee Peterson. I've tried to get him on the show. He would be fantastic to get on the show. I love that guy. He's one of the guys who really gets it. And he's not, you know what, Caleb? He would be great to get on the show to do the race discussion.
He would. That's one of the best thing about Jesse is that every time somebody tries to play the race card, it's like, well, he's black. And,
yeah, well, he's the one that started National White Day, because all the whites were afraid to do it. So Jesse Lee Peterson did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
great guy. He lives here in L.A. I should bug him some more and see if I can get him on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, great guy.
Oh, no.
He's a pastor. For those who don't know, he's got probably the most popular Christian show on the internet now, if not one of the top 5.
Yeah, that he's a good example of what happens when somebody actually starts to take accountability and responsibility and quit playing the victim and breaks free from the cultural shackles that have been ingrained in generation after generation. And I can't say enough about the guy, but there are other examples as well, and it's really good to have people like him in your arsenal for anytime a liberal will
Yeah,
come and
you
try
can look
to
at the
attack.
comments there. They love Jesse Lee.
Yeah, it
That's
looks like
great.
people know about him. That's cool.
Yep, need to get that guy on. Definitely. I'll follow up again and send him a few more dozen messages, see if we can get him on. And Candor says, "This has been the best year yet. Hope you have many more." I'll admit, folks, with all of the abuse from the audience and the intelligence community for doing the show, I mean, there has been a lot of abuse that they kick my way for exposing MK Ultra and all these agents and stuff. It hasn't been exactly easy. I wouldn't exactly recommend everybody go run off and start a show. You've got to be pretty thick-skinned to deal with all of the abuse from the liberals and the new age hippies, and all of them. They pretend like they're all lovey-dovey, leftists, and they have the moral high ground and they're so spiritual, but they're the meanest, crudest, rudest people I come across. The leftists are really the worst, but that includes the CIA are really left and all of that too. But it's it's not easy to sit there and to be on the front line, week after week, year after year, and keep going and keep trying to break through multiple veils that they have on these things and be able to expose them. It's a lot of work, and sometimes it can be pretty draining to deal with all of their crap. So I really really appreciate all of the support. Somebody just posted that John Taylor Gatto died. That's sad to
Oh,
hear.
oh man,
I
that's a
didn't know
bummer.
that. He had a stroke years ago and wasn't doing well for a long time. But if you go to the Logos Media website, I did some pretty extensive interviews with Gatto, and they went really deep into the material. So you definitely want to check that out. That was back in the audio only days when we were just a podcast. But too bad to hear on Gatto. Anyway, I sure hope to see some more support from the audience come this year, so that we can really push things and go deeper, and support for Caleb and Steven and everybody who help us do the research and all this stuff. But
Yeah, I'm actually. I'd really like to try to get up a website and start doing more videos and do what I can for the cause to do my part. It is very tough, especially when you have to have another career. So it'd be really nice if I could kind of start to transition. And you've done it, so I'm glad to
Well,
be your
I'm thinking
friend.
about starting to transition out of it. It's tough dealing with the public all the time. I don't like being in the public. The public are not they're not nice to in general. I mean, of course, there's some great people, Polygonal, Anthony, all of you guys in there who support the show, John and Candor, and all of you are great people. But all the trolls, all of that stuff, it does wear you down after a while. It's just nauseating dealing with degenerate people who can't get a life. It's like, they really, I mean, what can you say about somebody who takes a job as a troll just to screw with other people's lives and to try to suppress truth and facts? I mean, these people are psychopathic and demented, and what can you say about them? Thanks, Greg. That's Greg Quinones, whom I've done a couple of shows with on abiogenic oil. He says, Jan does the research that no one else does. You are a treasure, Jan. Thanks for that, Greg. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your work as well. And, we got some good traction on those oil shows. One other channel upload. Of course, my shows only get 3,000 to 5,000 views, but if somebody else uploads it, they'll get 60,000, 80,000 views in a week, like that one that you and I did, Greg. So, Dee Dee, thank you for the $20 donation just now. Hugely appreciate it. Let's see. Somebody's saying, Snowball is saying he's trolling on eBay. Okay, buddy. That sounds like fun. I don't know how you do that, but anyway, folks, I might take a break this Tuesday night for Hallows Eve. I'm not sure yet. You know, but it's, sometimes I just have to take a break from this. It's stressful I like to focus on the research and not the schedule, so sometimes if I have more research to do, I'll just skip a show. Thanks, Sanchez. He says you're doing great. I say you keep going. Well, Sanchez, throw some money in and I'll do my best. I mean, it's like, it's the money. It's like, I'm not living in this freaking cabin doing the show out of the kitchen for 8+ years, I'd like to get into a bigger place. 2019, my goal is to get out of this house and get into a place and have an actual dedicated studio room, so I'm not doing it out of the kitchen anymore. So, the kitchen has become sort of an internet icon. It's like when Karen Strow, Girl Writes What, used to do the show from her kitchen too. Now she's since moved on from the kitchen, but she managed to get free of the kitchen. I hope to one day get free of the kitchen too. So thanks for all the love and kind comments and support in the chat tonight, everybody. You have anything else you want to add, or are we?
I was just gonna say, man, I for one am very.
Oh, wait a second. Hold on. So Josh Connell, thanks, buddy. I've known you for 25 years, Josh, and you're a good old friend. I really appreciate your donation just now. He says, happy 10th anniversary. Keep up the great work. Can't wait to see what your research will be in another 10 years. Good grief. Don't give in to the trolls. Keep rising above them. And I got to mention something about Josh. I've thought about having him on the show for years. Josh was set up by the FBI as the SUV firebomber, and they put him through hell. And they made up all of the charges, and he lost his life for a good while. He was tortured by the FBI for 4 days, and he sued them and won. And, so good on you, Josh. You're one of the true fighters. And, they actually posted Josh's mugshot all over the internet for years, and it was all lies. And, CNN had his mugshot, and the LA Times had him on like the front page or something like that. But they really screwed up that guy's life. So thanks, Josh. Love you, brother. Thanks for the support, man. Go ahead. Sorry, Caleb.
I was just about to just say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm very appreciative of everything that I've learned over the years watching your show, and I don't know what I would do without the Trivium, and I don't know if I'd have found it in the format that I have without you. So it's been a great 10 years, and you should definitely celebrate it. And it's an awesome accomplishment. So, and I'm happy to be here for the show.
Well, thanks, and thanks for co-hosting and doing all you've done. I mean, you've probably been on, 15, 20 shows already, and you're a serious researcher, and love all the great work that you've pulled up. And, we got to get Robert Rowe back in here soon. I mean, that guy is just a monster researcher too, so can't wait till he joins back and can help us out. And I think Rachel just sent another $20 donation. Wow, thank you, Rachel, from looks like Minnesota. I appreciate the love tonight. Really appreciate it. Thanks again, Anthony. Thanks all of you so much for showing the love. He says, take a break for a month or so and clear your head out, get refocused, and then come back. Yeah, I've been thinking about doing that a lot, actually. That's great advice. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, all of you. I would love to actually take a month or two break, and I've been thinking about taking a break until the end of the year, maybe. But, yeah, Brian, you're a great supporter of the show, too. Yes, you can make show requests. We tend to go with the research more than the requests. Sometimes we do shows what people request. It's just hard to follow up and keep up on all the different tangents. But, shoot me an email. I think you have my email address. It's just contact@logosmedia.com. So, I don't know. Maybe I will take a break. That sounds like, great. The issue is, if I don't do the shows, it's hard enough to get the financial support to be able to do the research when I'm not focused on the shows. So it's like a balance between, keeping in front of all of you so that we can keep the research going, and, getting away from you all enough so that we can do the research, So it's like, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Yeah, I
anyway.
can relate to that, man. It's hard work. It's hard putting yourself through it. But you wouldn't regret it. You've become an awesome person, an awesome human being, and a good example. And that's really what it's all about. And if it just helps even just one or two people, make some better decisions for themselves, which allow them to go spread more information and become better people, then it's all worth it, right?
It is, and the only thing that has kept me going through all the years, ladies and gentlemen, is those of you who every once in a long while send me a really heartfelt email that brings me to tears when you say thank you for setting you free and getting you out of the mind control and the CIA MK Ultra crap and the Grateful Dead crap and the Burning Man crap and the music that you grew up with crap and all of the different mind control, or getting you off of wheat and grains and onto the ketogenic diet, and you lost 130 or 200, or I think one guy that messaged me once had lost almost 300 pounds. It's all of you guys who keep us going. It's the Rugies and the Jeffreys and the Kates and the Anthonys and the Joshes and the Dedes and the Rachels and the just all you awesome people, the Candors out there, all of you folks, the Dashing Rogue, all of you guys. I really couldn't do it without all of you. Wow. It has been a brutal 10 years. I started this when I was like, it's hard to believe, 37. Like, I'm pushing, 50's not so far away now. It's like, wow, actually I was pretty thin-haired from all the vegan malnutrition then. Actually, my hair kind of grew back after I quit veganism. And Hamish Ferguson throws up $20 and he says, "Your work has changed my life. I appreciate it." I appreciate all of you. I hope you all are throwing Caleb some donations too. Caleb, we got to get that website set up too,
I
so
know.
that we can,
Yeah.
and I was hoping to get that done in the last week or two. It's just, so much to do and so little time to do it in. But I'll try to get that Logos Roundtable website up this week so that we can at least get that going. And yeah, Caleb just put his email address up there. So please go onto PayPal and send him some love. And please do that. Send it as a friend so that Caleb gets the full donation and not PayPal getting a buck or two of it. If you send his friend, they don't take anything, so that's always appreciated. If you want to send a donation directly to contact@logosmedia.com as well, they won't take anything that way either. It's if you click on the link on the website when they take something. But again, thanks everybody, and I guess that's a wrap for me.
Yeah, that's a good show.
He said maybe you should share some of your donations with your guests too. Yeah, well, it's we have to pay the bills all around, but yeah, and we also try to give out the addresses for everybody as much as possible. And John says these monkeys are allocated for Kerrygold butter. Thank you, John. That's what is in here as well. I'm going to take some Kerrygold butter right now. I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for Kerrygold butter. That's no joke. There's for the next bar of Kerrygold butter. So anyway, before we get all emotional here, for 10 years, thanks everybody. Thanks I Belong in the Kitchen. Thanks all of you, Justin Lee, everybody. You guys are awesome. You guys are some of the best, smartest people on the internet. Some of the brightest audience out there. So anyway, take care, everyone, and good night.
Bye, everybody.